Polls.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And we thank you for being here, Barnaby.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're digging into something pretty complex, psychologically speaking. We're looking at the behavioral side of things, how you persuade longtime asset owners, specifically mobile home park sellers, these sort of mom and pop types, to really think about seller carry financing.
Yeah.
Instead of just taking that all-cash offer, they often lean towards.
Yeah, and it's way more than just running the numbers. It really is a mission. When you're talking to someone who's held onto a community for like 20, 30 years, you're not just doing a deal. You're navigating a huge life transition for them. Selling that asset, it's loaded, full of emotion, fear, definitely, but also pride, legacy. Their whole identity is tied up in it. Often the math points to seller carry being better for them, but psychologically, cash feels safer. So our job really is to understand the behavioral buttons, the levers that can flip that thinking.
And let's just nail down who we're talking about here. These mom and pop operators, they've usually been hands-on.
Yeah.
Very involved. They care about stewardship, control. They see the park almost like their baby, their life's work, not just lines on a spreadsheet. So getting them to carry a note, that means you have to overcome this decades-long habit of keeping things simple, keeping things liquid.
Exactly. And that bias towards simplicity, it's powerful because fundamentally it's rooted in fear.
Okay, let's unpack this a bit. The sources we looked at really hammered this point. Fear kills logic in these big decisions. If a seller's scared of complexity, scared of getting ripped off, then logical arguments just bounce right off.
Yep.
So the first job is peace of mind. Let's look at maybe 3 key psychological ideas for calming that fear. How about we start with loss aversion? What's that about in this context?
Loss aversion, yeah. This is foundational. It's a core idea in behavioral economics. Basically, people feel the pain of a loss about twice as much as the pleasure of an equivalent gain. So the seller usually thinks, cash is the gain, financing is the risk. We've got to turn that completely around.
Right, reverse the perception.
Yeah.
And the way to do that, it seems, is pretty clever. Frame the cash sale itself as the loss, the immediate, definite loss.
Exactly that. You take all that cash up front. Boom, Uncle Sam walks in, takes 30%, 40%, sometimes even more, right off the top in capital gains tax. That money, it's just gone, vanished, before the seller even gets a chance to think about reinvesting. But with seller carry, well, the entire amount, 100% of their price, keeps working for them, often tax deferred or at least spread out. So you're showing them, literally, with clear numbers. Taking cash guarantees you lose a big chunk now. Carrying the note is about preserving your wealth.
That's a powerful reframe. It shifts it from, maybe I'll miss out on some interest, to, whoa, I'm definitely losing a third of my money today if I take cash.
Yeah. Okay, next principle. Identity alignment. How do you connect this financing stuff to how the seller sees themselves?
Well, it depends on who they are, right?
Yeah.
You kind of need 2 different angles based on their personality. If they're known as a sharp operator, someone who, loves the business side, you play to their ego a bit. You say something like, look, you've run this place brilliantly for decades. Now it's time to graduate. Go from landlord to banker. Secure this guaranteed income stream, totally passive without the headaches of management.
I like that. Trading tenant calls for, just cashing checks. What about the other type, the legacy-focused ones, the ones who really feel responsible for the community? For them, it's a totally different message. You lean into the stewardship angle. You emphasize that financing the sale actually gives them control to choose who takes over their community. They're not just selling out to whoever waves the most cash. No, they're vetting the next caretaker. They're ensuring their life's work continues in good hands. It taps right into that sense of duty, that pride in what they built.
Makes sense. And the last piece in this first part, honoring all that effort they put in, sunk cost protection.
Yeah, think about it. Years, maybe decades of their life poured into that park. Sweat equity is real. You have to acknowledge that. You say, seller carry means your life's work keeps paying you back. It keeps generating dividends. It validates that huge emotional and time investment, tells them their effort isn't just ending, it's still producing for them, even after they've stepped back.
Okay, but hang on. This all sounds potentially complicated. We need to touch on cognitive ease. If explaining this feels like a math lecture, they'll just shut down, right? Fear comes rushing back. How do we wrap all these benefits up nice and simple?
Keep the takeaway crystal clear. Simple. Comfort comes from clarity, right? So the best frame contrasts their current reality, the day-to-day grind, with the future state. Seller carry is like getting a pension check every month, but with 0 toilets to fix. It takes away the burden, preserves the income. Simple as that.
All right, so we've calmed the initial fears about taxes, about losing money right away. But the seller still needs a reason, like a compelling reason, to choose your offer with financing over maybe an all-cash offer from someone else. This feels like where the control and legacy stuff really kicks in.
Absolutely. This is the core of what we call legacy framing. You shift the whole conversation. It's not just about the transaction details anymore. It's about designing a smooth, careful handoff. Think about it. An all-cash deal. It's sudden. It's final. Keys change hands. Boom, they're out. No more say.
But with seller carry, you're saying they can feel like they're still involved, like they're managing the transition?
Precisely. They're curating the next chapter. The financing structure itself gives them that control. They get input on the buyer. They influence the terms. They have a vested interest in the community's ongoing success. It changes that internal feeling, from I'm letting go of everything to I'm overseeing the continuity. Turns that potential anxiety into, well, pride.
Okay, but to make that stick, you need trust. You mentioned social proof. How does the liking principle play in here? I mean, does just saying, hey, your buddy Joe down the road did this last year and loves it actually work? Or does that sound a bit salesman-y?
It works if it's genuine and feels like pure advice, not a sales pitch. You're not showing them some glossy testimonial. You're just normalizing it within their circle of trust. When they hear that another owner, someone local they respect, someone who had the same worries, went with seller carry and is doing great, that cuts through skepticism way faster than any spreadsheet.
Yeah, that makes sense. It connects emotionally, which leads right into how you talk about it. Numbers lecture, stories connect, using story-based framing.
Stories are just crucial. They bypass the analytical brain and go straight for the emotions. You need a quick story, something relatable, like, remember Jane and Joe, worried sick about taxes, about retirement income. Well, they sold their park with financing, and now they get this steady check every month while they're off traveling. It paints a picture, shows them a desirable future they can actually achieve, gives them that peace of mind.
And how do we reinforce that this isn't some weird, risky idea, but actually the smart move? That sounds like tribal alignment, making them feel part of the in crowd.
Yeah, sort of. You position it as the choice of experienced, savvy operators like them. The language is subtle. A lot of longtime owners find seller carry makes the most sense. It's kind of seen as the seasoned, fiscally smart way to exit after decades. And you layer that with pride appeals. Look, you didn't just own some property. You built a real community here. Seller carry lets you stay, in a way, captain of that wealth you created, just without the daily grind.
Okay, let's tackle the elephant in the room. The big one, risk. Specifically, the risk of the buyer defaulting. If I'm that seller, my first thought is, okay, this buyer wants financing because they couldn't get a bank loan. Right, that skepticism is natural. How do we flip that? Turn perceived risk into, well, leverage for the seller.
You have to spell out the backup ROI. Make it totally clear. The seller needs to understand deep down that they aren't the one exposed here. They hold the power. They hold the lien. If the buyer does default, and you have to address this directly, what happens? 1, the seller keeps the down payment, often substantial. 2, they keep every single monthly payment they've received up to that point.
Yeah.
3, they get the park back.
And often, the park's in better condition because the buyer's likely put some money into fixing things up,
Right.
catching up on maintenance.
Exactly. That's the kicker. That's why we call it backup ROI. Default isn't a catastrophe for the seller. It's actually a scenario where they could potentially come out ahead, they keep the cash paid, and they get back an improved asset. It just totally shifts the conversation from, oh no, what if they fail, to, okay, how is my position protected if they fail? It's risk management, not just risk avoidance.
And fear feeds on uncertainty, on vagueness. So we need concrete numbers to ground them, to kill that anxiety. How do we talk numbers without it sounding dry or, just like a calculation?
You make it real. You translate that interest rate into monthly income they can relate to. Use a really simple example. Say the park sells for $1 million. They carry $500,000 at, say, 5% interest. Okay, what does that mean? That's about $2,700 hitting their bank account every single month, guaranteed. And that $2,700, it's not abstract. That covers their health insurance. That pays their mortgage. That funds their fishing trips, whatever their goal is.
Hold on. So you're saying they get maybe $2,700 a month just from holding half the note. And that could easily cover the very expenses that keep them up at night about retirement. And over 5 years, that interest alone could be, what, $160,000? Wow. That's tangible.
It connects the financing directly to their life. It stops being finance and starts being my monthly paycheck without the work.
We also need to fight that status quo bias. The feeling that the all-cash offer is safe just because it feels familiar. We have to actively argue that cash is actually the risky path.
Yeah, the cash deal comes with its own set of brand new risks, doesn't it? Suddenly you've got this huge pile of cash. What do? You've got massive tax implications right now, inflation eating away at it. And now you have a stressful new job, figuring out how to reinvest all that money safely, effectively, to get the same kind of return you were getting from the park. All of a sudden, that seller carry deal, the automated passive income, starts looking like the safe, low-stress choice.
And just to cover all bases, making sure they don't feel locked in, detailing the safety nets.
Absolutely. You have to stress that the note itself, it's an asset. It has value. If they need a lump sum later for an emergency or opportunity, that note can be sold to someone else, or it can be refinanced. Maybe you structure it with a balloon payment in 5 or 7 years if that makes them feel better. The message is you are never trapped. You normalize it. Banks trade notes like this constantly. Now you get to be the bank. You get the security and the profit.
Okay, so thinking ahead, what are the big roadblocks that always seem to come up? In any serious talk like this, you got to anticipate the main sticking points, maybe the top 3. Let's spend a moment on those, maybe unpack the real anxiety behind them.
Yeah, the first one is almost always going to be the default question, but it hits deep. Objection 1. Yeah, but what if the buyer actually defaults?
Right, and the fear there isn't just losing future income, is it? It's the nightmare scenario, having to take the park back, maybe manage it again, undoing their retirement dream. How do you tackle that specific double fear?
First, you validate it. Don't brush it off. Say, that's absolutely the right question to ask. It's the most important what if. And here's exactly how this deal protects you. Then you circle right back to that backup ROI we talked about. Remind them. Keep the down payment, keep all payments made, get the park back, likely improved. They're financially way better off than if they'd taken cash and now had to scramble to replace lost income from some other investment. It's not going back to work, it's a profit protection plan. Okay, second big worry is usually about flexibility. Objection 2. What if I need a chunk of cash later for an emergency or something?
Yeah, this is about feeling stuck in retirement. They think cash today equals freedom later.
So the response has to be super clear about the note as an asset. It's liquid, just in a different form. The answer is simple. The note can be sold, or you can borrow against it anytime. They are not locked in for the full term. It assures them the note is valuable collateral, ready to be turned into cash if and when they need it. And the last one, the one that's often just gut instinct, objection 3. Why not just take the cash? Be done with it all. Simple.
And here we need to remind them that being done with the park means starting a new, maybe harder job.
Exactly. Cash means taxes now, and it means the immediate, often stressful task of managing that big chunk of money in today's market. Where do you put it? What's safe? What yields enough? Seller carry means being done with the tenants, done with the maintenance, but not done with the income.
Yes.
Guaranteed income. You frame seller carry as the real way to be done with the work while keeping the wealth machine running. Hashtag outro.
So wrapping this all up, we've gone through mitigating fear, highlighting control, quantifying the safety net. But there's maybe one last layer, a final bit of, let's call it ethical persuasion, to help the seller feel like this isn't just an option, but maybe the wisest one.
Yeah, you close the loop with some powerful, longer-term psychological points. First, maybe a touch of ethical FOMO, fear of missing out. You genuinely share that, look, some sellers who took cash later regretted it when they realized how much they left on the table in interest, and especially in tax savings over the years, tens, maybe hundreds of thousands.
And then maybe gently challenge how they see themselves, using cognitive dissonance.
Right, you kind of hold up a mirror. You've always prided yourself on being a smart long-term planner with this community, with your finances. Doesn't ignoring a path that's potentially safer, generates better returns passively, doesn't that kind of contradict that identity? It nudges them to resolve that internal conflict, maybe by taking the seller carry option more seriously.
And lastly, maybe pointing to the current market.
Yeah.
Genuine urgency.
Yeah, right now, interest rates are actually pretty decent for sellers carrying paper. Locking in a safe 5%, maybe 6% return on their own money, that's attractive, but that window might not stay open forever. So the urgency isn't pressure, it's tied to a real financial opportunity that exists now.
So the big takeaway here seems to be that persuading isn't about pushing, it's about deep reassurance. It's about systematically addressing those core fears, taxes, control, default, and reframing the seller carry option, turning their hesitation into a point of pride, showing it as the choice of a seasoned, thoughtful owner.
Exactly. And this whole approach, it goes beyond just making the deal work for the buyer by minimizing their cash down. It positions seller financing as a structure that genuinely rewards the seller's decades of work, their wisdom, their long view, their desire to see things continue well. So here's the final thought for you, the listener, to chew on today. How can your next proposal be structured not just to meet the seller's need for cash, but to actively reward their wisdom and legacy?